Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're about to plunge into your stack of sources on a technology that feels both futuristic and increasingly present, virtual reality.
Absolutely. It's everywhere in the conversation right now.
Our mission today is to really unpack this material, understand what VR actually is, where it's at today, how it's expanding, and tackle that big, buzzing question. Is this thing really going to replace your smartphone?
Yes, the smartphone question. It's definitely the elephant in the room for the industry. And yeah, your sources give us a lot to chew on there.
Okay, so we'll dig into the core tech, look at the big players pouring, well, billions into this.
Billions, yeah. It's staggering. We'll follow the money, see how AI is just completely changing the game.
AI feels like it's changing everything right now.
It really is. And we'll look at where VR is making real impacts, beyond just the gaming world.
Great. Expect some surprising facts, some key insights, all pulled directly from the research you shared with us. Okay, let's get started. What exactly are we talking about when we say virtual reality?
So at its heart, VR is, it's about immersion. The whole point is to make you feel like you are inside a computer-generated place.
Right, not just looking at a screen.
Exactly. You're experiencing it, interacting with it, all in real time. It's about that feeling of presence.
And the sources mention its use for visualizing complex things, simulating experiences.
Yeah, visualizing things you can't easily see, like a molecule maybe. Simulating things that are too dangerous or expensive to do in real life, like flight training or surgical practice, or just exploring virtual world.
Okay, so that's VR, but then we hear about AR and Mr. Augmented and mixed reality. How do they fit in? The terms get confusing.
They really do. Okay, so VR, like we said, fully immerses you, usually blocks out the real world. You put on the headset, boom, you're somewhere else.
Total replacement.
Right. Augmented reality, AR, that just overlays digital stuff onto your view of the real world. Think Pokemon Go or seeing how virtual furniture looks in your actual living room using your phone.
Got it. Digital layer on top.
Yeah. And mixed reality, or MR, kind of blends the two. It lets digital objects interact with your real environment, and you can interact with those digital objects within your real space. This is becoming a huge focus now with headsets getting better cameras.
So VR replaces, AR overlays, MR blends, and interacts. Makes sense. The sources also talked about different levels of VR itself, based on immersion.
They did. It's basically about how much of your senses get involved. Fully immersive is the classic idea, right? Headset on, completely enveloped, maybe sensors tracking you. Think advanced gaming, serious simulations.
That's what most people picture, I think.
Probably. Then there's semi-immersive, which is a bit more limited, maybe digital stuff interacting with some real-world setup. Advanced training sometimes uses this.
Okay.
And non-immersive is really just a 3D environment on a regular screen, like a standard PC game or a basic driving simulator you might see in an arcade. Minimal physical interaction.
So the real focus for consumers now is that fully immersive, or maybe increasingly, that mixed reality experience.
Definitely. That's where the cutting edge is.
Okay, so to make that happen, what are the key tech bits working together? What makes it feel real?
It's a pretty complex dance between hardware and software. And the absolute key, the thing they're always chasing, is low latency.
Latency. You knew the delay.
Exactly. The delay between when you move your head, say, and when the image in the headset updates. It has to be incredibly fast, ideally under 20 milliseconds.
20 milliseconds. Why so fast?
Because anything slower, even slightly, and your brain notices the disconnect. That's what causes motion sickness for a lot of people. It breaks the illusion instantly.
Okay. I felt that. Not fun. So low latency is crucial. What else?
Well, you need the hardware, obviously. The headset itself, the head-mounted display, or HMD, that's got high-res screens, lenses, think MetaQuest 3, HTC Vive Pro 2.
The goggles part.
Right. Then you need tracking sensors. These figure out where your head and maybe your body are moving in physical space. Can be external cameras, infrared setups, or increasingly, cameras built into the headset. That's called inside-out tracking.
So it knows where I am and how I'm looking, and I need to interact, right?
Yeah, input devices. Handheld controllers are the most common. Often they have haptic feedback.
Haptics, like vibrations.
Yeah, vibrations, force feedback, so you can sort of feel things. Picking up an object, the recoil of a tool, maybe even textures. There are also specialized gloves. Or just using cameras to track your bare hands.
Okay, that's the physical gear. What about the software side and the brains?
Software builds the virtual world itself. Game engines are huge here. Unity and Unreal Engine are the big ones developers use to create the 3D environments, make things obey physics, handle
The
interactions.
tools to build the matrix, basically.
Sort of, yeah. Then you need APIs and SDKs, software kits, to let the games talk to the hardware smoothly. And powering it all is the processing unit.
So a powerful computer. Or
It can be. High-end PC VR needs a beefy graphics card, a good CPU, or it could be a game console, like the PlayStation 5 for the PSVR 2. Or, for standalone headsets like the Quest 3, all the processing is built right into the headset itself.
which seems amazing, cramming all that power into something you wear.
It's a real engineering feat, balancing performance with battery life, heat, weight. It's a constant challenge, especially for those standalone devices.
Okay, fascinating stuff. But let's shift gears. Let's tackle that big, juicy question your sources dive into. Is VR going to replace the smartphone?
Right, the big one. And based on everything we're seeing in these sources, the consensus is pretty clear. Not anytime soon. Not in the way we currently use smartphones, anyway.
Okay, why not? How do phones in VR stack up for just, daily life tasks?
Think about basic communication. Your phone is perfect for firing off a quick text, checking email, making a call, glancing at notifications. It's instant, always on.
Right, second nature.
VR can offer amazing social experiences, sure. Platforms like VRChat or Meta's Horizon Worlds let you interact in really immersive ways. But just sending a simple text message while you're wearing a headset, it's awkward, it's slow. Research actually shows typing is significantly harder in VR.
Yeah, I can't see myself quickly replying to a work email while walking down the street wearing a Quest 3.
Exactly. Portability and instant access are huge for phones. Then there's productivity. Phones give us access to millions of apps right there.
True. My whole life is on this thing.
VR has potential, definitely. People are experimenting with virtual monitors, collaborative design spaces. The sources mention apps like Immersed. Apple's Vision Pro is heavily marketed as a spatial computer for getting work done using eye tracking and hand gestures.
Sounds cool, but practical.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Wearing a headset for 8 hours straight, comfort is still a massive issue for most people, and interacting with traditional software can be clunky. The Vision Pro is amazing tech, but reports suggest comfort and practicality for long sessions are real concerns for users.
What about entertainment? VR gaming is pretty stunning.
Oh, absolutely. For deeply immersive gaming or watching videos in a virtual cinema, VR is incredible. But we're just casually scrolling through social media, watching quick YouTube clips, browsing the web on the go. The phone is just easier, faster, requires zero setup.
And those old phone VR things, like Google Cardboard.
Yeah, the sources basically say those did more harm than good. Very limited interactivity, often just letting you look around, not really move or interact. It gave a lot of people a bad first impression of what real VR is.
So convenience, quick access, portability, huge advantages for the phone.
Massive. Phones are pocketable, always ready. VR headsets, even the standalone ones, are still relatively bulky. You have to put them on, maybe adjust them. Battery life is typically only, 2 or 3 hours for a Quest 3. You're not whipping it out on the train.
And the social awkwardness factor, wearing a headset in public.
That's another huge barrier the sources point out. Using your phone in public is completely normal. Wearing a big headset, it looks strange, it visually cuts you off from others, and raises privacy questions with those outward-facing cameras. Huge social hurdle.
So the takeaway from user reviews and experiences seems to be, VR is amazing for specific, dedicated, immersive stuff, but it's just not practical for the everyday, quick-hit functions our phones handle.
That sums it up perfectly. Even the super high-end Vision Pro runs into the same fundamental issues of comfort, battery life, and social acceptance for all-day, everywhere use.
And the adoption numbers reflect this gap, right? VR users versus smartphone users.
Oh, dramatically. The sources cite figures like maybe 98 million VR users in 2023, heading towards 100 million by 2027, according to Statista, which sounds like a lot until you compare it to the billions of smartphone users globally.
Billions with a B, okay.
And while the overall AR/VR market forecast shows huge growth, hundreds of billions by 2030, the sources clarify that a lot of that expected growth is actually in augmented reality and in enterprise uses, not necessarily consumer VR headsets taking over phones tomorrow. Price is also a factor. Headsets range from $300 for a Quest 3S to $3,500 for a Vision Pro, while decent smartphones can be found much cheaper.
Okay, so what are the experts saying? Mark Zuckerberg seems all in on VR replacing phones eventually.
He's definitely pushing that vision, yeah. But interestingly, his recent focus, and that of many experts cited, seems to be shifting more towards AR glasses. Lightweight glasses that overlay information, potentially using AI and holograms. He sees those as the potential phone successor.
Ah, so glasses, not necessarily the bulky headsets we have now. That AR/MR distinction seems critical here.
It really is. A Pew Research survey found most experts think a functional metaverse used daily by 500 million people by 2040 is plausible, but they envision it centered on AR and MR, not necessarily full VR immersion all the time.
So augmenting reality first, maybe replacing it much, much later.
That seems to be the consensus view. Ericsson Consumer Lab suggested AR/MR glasses will likely start as companions to phones first. Forrester Research noted VR is still strongly associated with gaming, which limits its appeal for everyday tasks, and sees devices like Vision Pro as specialized computers, not direct phone replacements.
And Omdia, they had a long timeline.
Yeah. Omdia forecasts a really long-term shift, maybe 2035 to 2045, before lightweight smart glasses become dominant, with MR being the key form factor. Even then, they suggest many might still be tethered to phones in 2035. Analysts like Ben Wood at CCS Insight are pretty blunt. They just don't see headsets displacing the phone because it's so deeply embedded in our lives.
Okay, so if VR isn't replacing the phone soon, what are the biggest roadblocks? And what could actually push it forward eventually?
The sources list several key barriers. Form factor is huge headsets are still too big and bulky for all-day wear compared to a phone.
Comfort, basically.
Yeah, comfort, portability, user experience, it's still often clunky for quick tasks. The content ecosystem there isn't that killer suite of non-gaming apps that make a headset indispensable for daily life yet.
Right, the why do I need this every day question.
Exactly. Cost is still a barrier, though, coming down. Social acceptance for public use is near zero, and underlying tech limitations, battery, mobile processing power, bandwidth for untethered high-fidelity stuff.
Sounds like that classic chicken and egg scenario. Need users for content, need content for users.
Precisely. But there are powerful drivers, too. Big leaps in AR and XR glasses technology R&D into making them lighter, more stylish.
The glasses idea again.
Yeah. And crucially, the integration of AI. AI can make interactions far more natural, personalize experiences, add contextual awareness. Zuckerberg sees AI as key, developing genuinely compelling use cases beyond gaming productivity, social, education, health is vital, and just continued improvement in immersion, displays, tracking, haptics. Plus, the massive ongoing investment from the tech giants can't be ignored.
So wrapping up this section, the verdict from the sources seems to be, no, current VR headsets won't replace your phone. It's a much longer game, likely involving an evolution towards AR/MR glasses that might complement phones first, and then maybe decades down the line, become primary devices offering entirely new experiences.
That captures the nuanced picture presented in the sources. Yes, a multi-decade evolution, not an overnight replacement.
Okay, let's talk about the companies actually building this future. Who are the main players in the VR ecosystem right now?
Well, you've got a few heavy hitters and then some others carving out niches. Meta is by far the volume leader right now.
With the Quest headsets.
Right. The IDC figures for 2024 show them holding something like 75% of the overall market share. Their strategy is all about mass adoption. Affordable standalone headsets like Quest 3, and now the even cheaper Quest 3S. They're pushing mixed reality, their social platform Horizon Worlds, integrating AI heavily, trying to build that whole ecosystem.
And they've had success selling headsets.
Huge success with the Quest 2, reportedly over 20 million sold. Quest 3 and 3S seem well received, but, and it's a big but,
At the cost.
the staggering cost. Their Reality Labs division is losing astronomical amounts of money. The sources mention over $60 billion in losses since 2020, $17.7 billion just in 2024. They're subsidizing hardware heavily, betting everything on this long-term vision. It shows commitment, but also the immense financial challenge.
Okay, then you have Apple jumping in at the very high end with Vision Pro.
Totally different strategy. Apple's positioning Vision Pro not just as VR, but as a premium spatial computer. High-fidelity MR, focused on productivity, entertainment, tightly integrated with their ecosystem, and their long-term goal seems clearly pointed towards lightweight AR glasses. Tim Cook is reportedly obsessed with making them the next big thing after the iPhone.
How's the Vision Pro doing, based on the reports?
Technically, it's incredible. Sources praise the display, the tracking, the pass-through video, but that $3,500 price tag is a major hurdle. There are reports of slowing sales, production forecasts being cut significantly, maybe exploring cheaper models, even potentially dismantling the dedicated Vision products group. It's showcasing the future, but struggling with mainstream adoption right now due to cost and maybe comfort.
What about Sony? They're leveraging the PlayStation, right?
Exactly. PSVR 2 is tied to the PS5. It's focused purely on high-fidelity console gaming. Sold over 1 million units in its first year, praised for graphics, haptics, eye tracking. Some game developers even say it's more profitable to develop for than Quest sometimes.
So successful in its niche.
Strong start, yeah. But reports suggest sales might have slowed down after the initial hype. Manufacturing was apparently paused after 2 million units. And you need a PS5, which adds to the overall cost. Building out that compelling library of exclusive games is still key for them.
And ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, they have Pico.
Yeah, Pico is positioned as a direct competitor to Meta's Quest, especially in the consumer space with headsets like the Pico 4 Ultra. They've gained some ground, particularly outside the US, in Europe and Asia, offer competitive hardware.
But challenging Meta is tough.
Very tough. Building the brand awareness, building a content library that rivals Meta's, it's hard. And competing with Meta's subsidized hardware model is extremely difficult, especially on a global scale. Their market share actually dipped a bit in late 2024.
Okay, one more hardware player mentioned is XRL. Different focus.
Totally different. XReal makes lightweight AR glasses, designed to connect to your smartphone, aimed at portability and everyday AR use cases. They were actually one of the few, along with Meta, to see shipment growth in 2024. It's a different market segment, betting on that glasses form factor gaining traction.
So we have Meta going for mass market dominance, Apple premium spatial computing with an eye on future glasses, Sony owning the console niche, Pico competing directly with Meta, and XReal focusing on AR glasses. It's a dynamic space.
It really is. And the key thing the sources emphasize is that hardware alone isn't enough. Success requires balancing that tech innovation with accessible pricing and cultivating a rich content ecosystem. The competition for developers is intense, and financial sustainability, as Meta's losses show, is a massive ongoing challenge.
Let's dig into that content ecosystem. Who's actually making the VR experiences?
Well, at the foundation, you have the game engines. Unity and Unreal Engine are the dominant tools developers use to build these virtual worlds.
Which one is bigger for VR?
Unity has historically been favored for VR development. It's seen as user-friendly, has a huge asset store, good toolkits, and strong cross-platform support. It was the favored SDK for Apple Vision Pro, too. Unreal Engine is known more for its high-end graphics capabilities, really pushing visual fidelity, often used for AAA games and more demanding simulations. Interestingly, Unreal is gaining ground, even surpassing Unity and Steam revenue generated by games made with it in 2024 for the first time in years. Meta also partnered with Unreal for Quest 3 development.
So developers choose based on their project needs.
Pretty much. Project scope, target platform, desired visual quality, team expertise. Both are integrating AI tools now, too, to help with asset creation and even things like AI characters.
Beyond the engines, are there specialized VR development companies?
Oh, yeah, a growing number. Companies like Euphoria XR, Groove Jones, Cubix, they offer services from building marketing experiences and training simulations to full game development and enterprise solutions.
And what about user-generated content? Social VR seems big.
Huge. Platforms like VRChat are massively popular, driven entirely by users creating their own avatars and worlds. It has a really vibrant community. Rec Room is another big one, focusing on users building and playing games together, almost like a VR Roblox. And then Meta has Horizon Worlds, their own platform they're investing heavily in.
Are these platforms sustainable? Can creators make money?
It's evolving. VRChat recently launched its own marketplace for creators to sell assets, reportedly generating decent income for some despite a hefty platform cut. Rec Room has a creator payout system too. Meta is obviously pouring money into Horizon Worlds, but building sustainable business models, especially after initial investment runs out or if user growth slows, is still a challenge, as seen with some layoffs even at places like VRChat.
So the content creation market itself is growing fast.
Very fast. Sources project robust growth, like a 42% Kaluja content creation over the next several years, fueled by gaming, media, training demand, and the backing of the tech giants. Video content is expected to be a particularly high-growth area within VR.
Okay, speaking of money, let's zoom out again. We mentioned Meta's massive spending. What's the overall investment picture, and what are the market projections saying?
The corporate investment is just immense. Meta's overall R&D projected around $43 billion for 2024, Apple's at $33 billion, Google nearing $50 billion, Microsoft over $30 billion. While not all for VR, significant chunks are funding the core AI, chip design, display tech, and software platforms that underpin AR and VR development.
These companies are clearly playing the long game.
Absolutely. Meta's Reality Labs losses demonstrate they're focused on building the ecosystem for the future, not immediate profits. Apple's investment in custom silicon and Vision OS shows their strategic commitment to spatial computing and eventually AR glasses. Google's working with Samsung on Android XR, Microsoft's focusing on enterprise with HoloLens and integrating AI. These huge investments are driving the fundamental tech advancements.
What about venture capital? Are startups getting funded in this space?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, according to the sources. The overall VC market saw a bit of a rebound recently, but the overwhelming trend is the flood of money going into AI.
So AI startups are soaking up all the oxygen.
A lot of it, yeah. Startups doing AR/VR with a strong AI angle are probably better positioned to attract funding. But for pure hardware startups, especially those needing lots of capital, it's tougher right now unless they have a really clear path to profitability or a major breakthrough. The broader VC market outside the AI frenzy was described as experiencing a deal-making drought in 2024. So caution prevails for many high-risk ventures. The deep pockets are mainly with the established tech giants.
Okay, but despite VC caution, the overall market size forecasts are still really optimistic.
Consistently bullish, yeah. The projections you find in the sources all point to strong double-digit growth for the AR/VR market over the next decade. We're talking figures like the market growing by over $440 billion by 2028, according to Technavio, or Grandview Research projecting a $435 billion global VR market by 2030. IDC forecasts AR/VR headset shipments, after maybe a slight dip in 2025 due to some product delays, will rebound strongly in 2026 and see nearly 40% compound annual growth through 2029. Specific segments like VR social platforms or VR gaming are also projected for huge growth. Omdia sees XR device sales hitting over 60 million units annually by 2035 and over 200 million by 2045, with MR glasses leading the way.
So the belief is definitely there that this market is going to be massive eventually.
The long-term trajectory looks very positive based on these forecasts. It's driven by expected advances in tech, growth in content, wider enterprise adoption where the ROI is clearer, and continued consumer interest, especially as costs come down and use cases expand. But again, it hinges on overcoming those adoption hurdles we discussed. Meta's losses are a stark reminder that the path to widespread profitability requires sustained investment and focus.
You keep mentioning AI as a key driver. Let's really focus on that. How is artificial intelligence fundamentally changing VR? It feels critical.
It absolutely is. AI isn't just making VR prettier, it's making it smarter, more interactive, more personalized, more real in a sense.
How are we seeing that right now? What are current applications?
Well, for starters, creating more realistic interactions. AI can simulate more believable human behaviors in virtual characters, making interactions feel less scripted and more dynamic. This boosts that feeling of presence.
Intelligent characters, NPCs.
Exactly. Using machine learning, NPCs can actually learn from interactions, understand context, react to your speech, maybe even infer your emotional state from your actions or tone. The sources mention games using large language models, like GPT, to give characters more autonomous thought and conversational ability.
So they feel less like robots reading lines.
That's the goal, yeah. Moving towards that. AI is also huge for personalization. It can analyze how you play, where you look, what you interact with, and adapt the experience on the fly.
Tailoring it to me.
Right. Adjusting game difficulty, changing the mood of a scene, providing personalized feedback and training simulations, recommending content. It makes the virtual world react to you.
What else? Voice commands?
Natural language processing, yeah. Being able to talk naturally to characters or control the environment with your voice, hands-free. AI is also getting better at interpreting nonverbal cues, body language, facial expressions captured by headset cameras, maybe even physiological data like heart rate from wearables to understand user state.
Like detecting if I'm stressed or excited.
Potentially, yeah. Imagine a therapy app detecting anxiety and subtly making the environment more calming. Or a training sim recognizing confusion. AI also helps with more realistic physics simulations and better gesture recognition, so you can interact naturally without controllers. It can even help smooth out movements to reduce motion sickness.
That's fascinating. What about generative AI? That's everywhere now. How's it impacting VR creation?
It's revolutionary for VR development. Creating detailed 3D worlds and assets is incredibly time-consuming and expensive. Generative AI can automate huge parts of that.
Like creating models or textures from text.
Exactly. Generating 3D models, environments, animations, textures just from prompts or parameters, it massively speeds up development, lowers costs, and allows creators to build much larger, more diverse worlds than they could manually. Both Unity and Unreal are integrating these tools.
That could really open up VR creation to more people.
Absolutely. It democratizes content creation. It also enables dynamic storytelling AI engines that can adapt narratives and dialogue based on your choices, making experiences more personalized and replayable. It moves beyond static scripts.
So looking ahead, AI seems like it will be completely woven into the fabric of VR and AR.
It seems inevitable. The sources see it driving hyper-realistic simulations for training, medicine, entertainment. Future devices, especially those lightweight AR glasses, will heavily rely on AI for intuitive interaction, voice, gestures, context awareness. AI is what will make those glasses truly useful.
And making social VR more populated and engaging.
Definitely. Filling virtual worlds with believable AI characters, facilitating natural conversations, managing avatars. Deloitte even talked about AI coworkers in VR meetings. AI will be key to blending VR, AR, MR, even IoT data into seamless hybrid experiences.
So AI is the accelerator, solving some of VR's biggest content and interaction challenges.
It really is. But, and this is crucial, the sources also stress the significant ethical challenges. Privacy is paramount. These AI systems are analyzing incredibly sensitive, super personal data, your gaze, movements, environment, maybe even your emotions.
Super personal data. It sounds intense.
Yeah, it is. Securing that data, ensuring ethical use, dealing with copyright for AI-generated content, potential for manipulation. These are huge issues. We need strong safeguards and ethical guidelines to ensure AI-enhanced VR remains human-centric and trustworthy.
A really important point. Okay, let's step back to the hardware for a moment. We talked about the players, but let's quickly recap the main types of VR systems and maybe highlight a few key headsets again based on the sources.
Sure. The main categories depend on where the processing happens. You've got standalone VR.
Like the Quest series. Everything in the headset.
Exactly. Untethered freedom. Great for accessibility. Then PC tethered VR.
Valve Index. HTC Vive Pro 2 needs a powerful computer.
Right. Tether limits movement, but you get top-tier graphics because you're using the PC's horsepower. And console-based VR.
PlayStation VR 2 for the PS5.
Yep, balance of fidelity and ease of use within that specific gaming ecosystem. And that old smartphone VR.
Basically dead for real VR. Right?
Pretty much, yeah. The sources confirm it gave VR a bad name early on. Limited, often nauseating.
So the trend is standalone and console for mainstream, PC for enthusiasts.
That seems to be the way it's shaken out.
Okay, quick highlights on some top headsets from 2024, 2025. Meta Quest 3.
Seen as the best all-around mainstream choice right now. Standalone, good specs, crisp display with pancake lenses, decent color pass-through from Mr. R around $500. Balances features and price.
And the new Quest 3S.
Meta's budget play. $300. Same fast processor as the 3, also has color pass-through, but uses older Fresnel lenses like the Quest 2, so the display isn't as sharp. Great entry point for casual users.
Apple Vision Pro.
The ultra-premium spatial computer, $3,500.
Yeah.
Technically stunning micro-OLED displays, amazing eye-hand tracking, fantastic pass-through, but very expensive. Concerns about comfort and battery life, and reports of slowing sales suggest it's struggling for broad adoption despite showcasing future potential.
Sony PSVR 2.
Great for PS5 owners, excellent graphics leveraging the console, eye-tracking, cool controller haptics. Price cut to $400 makes it more attractive, but you need the PS5 and the game library is still growing compared to Quest.
And for the PC diehards, Valve Index and HTC Vive Pro 2.
Still top choices for PC VR. Index, $1,000 kit, famous for its finger-tracking controllers and smooth high refresh rate. Vive Pro 2, $800 headset only, boasts incredible resolution. Both need external sensors and a powerful PC, for those prioritizing fidelity above all else.
And Pico 4 Ultra.
ByteDance's competitor to Quest. Good hardware specs, often praised for comfort and design, strong in Asia and Europe, but faces challenges building out its app store and competing with Meta globally.
So a clear segmentation in the market. What about the underlying tech making these better? Haptics, foveated rendering.
Yeah, these enabling technologies are crucial. Advanced haptics bodysuits like haptics, better controller feedback let you feel the virtual world more, enhances immersion dramatically.
Foveated rendering, that saves power, right?
Exactly. It uses eye tracking to only render the very center of your vision in full detail, reducing the load on the processor. Big deal for standalone headsets' performance and battery life. PSVR 2 has it.
And eye tracking itself.
Allows for gaze-based control, which is very intuitive. Plus, it provides data on where users are looking, which can be used for personalization, research, even potential diagnostics down the line.
And pass through, seeing the real world through the headset.
Especially color pass-through, like on Quest 3 and Vision Pro. It's a game changer for mixed reality, lets you interact with digital objects overlaid onto your actual surroundings much more naturally, blurs the lines between VR and AR, makes VR feel less isolating, opens up possibilities for productivity, staying aware of your space.
It really sounds like all these techs are converging to make VR/MR more seamless, intuitive, and integrated with reality.
That's absolutely the direction, making it less of a completely separate world and more of a blended experience.
Okay, so we know VR is big in gaming, but where else is it really making waves? Where is it transforming fields beyond entertainment, according to the sources?
Enterprise, education, and healthcare are seeing rapid growth and real, tangible benefits.
Like how are businesses using it?
Training is huge. It's effective and often cheaper. Pfizer reportedly saved thousands per trainee using VR for complex lab procedures. A restaurant used it to cut training time from weeks to hours and eliminated food waste. You can practice dangerous tasks, operating heavy machinery, emergency procedures safely.
Makes sense. Saves money, improves safety.
Exactly. Also used for design and prototyping, visualizing 3D models collaboratively, catching flaws early, remote collaboration in virtual meeting rooms, offering a better sense of presence than video calls. Even retail is using it for virtual showrooms and product demos. The ROI is becoming clearer for many businesses.
What about education?
It's really changing how learning happens. Immersive field trips walk around ancient Rome, explore the solar system, virtual science labs where you can experiment without real-world constraints or danger.
Way more engaging than a textbook.
Totally. Platforms like ClassVR are bringing curriculum-aligned content into schools. Studies cited show improved learning outcomes, better retention, sometimes faster learning. Stanford used it for empathy training. It's powerful for both knowledge acquisition and developing soft skills.
And healthcare sounds like a massive area of potential.
Huge. Medical training is a big one. Surgeons practicing complex operations in VR simulators like Precision OS or Immersive Touch before touching a real patient. Reduces errors, builds confidence.
Wow. For patients, too.
Yes. Pain management is proving very effective. VR experiences can distract patients, reduce anxiety during painful procedures, or for chronic pain. RelievEX is even FDA approved for chronic lower back pain relief. Mental health therapy is another key area, using VR for exposure therapy, for PTSD, phobias, anxiety in controlled, immersive settings.
Like facing your fear of heights on a virtual balcony.
Exactly. And physical or cognitive rehabilitation, VR games, and exercises tailored to help patients recover motor function or cognitive skills after a stroke or brain injury. The healthcare VR market is expected to grow significantly.
So VR is definitely proving its value as a serious tool well beyond gaming. That seems critical for its long-term adoption.
Absolutely fundamental. Demonstrating that practical value and ROI in these fields is key to VR becoming more integrated into work and life.
Okay, we've covered so much: the tech, the players, the money, AI, applications. It sounds incredibly promising, but let's be realistic. What are the biggest hurdles still holding VR back from truly widespread adoption?
Yeah, despite the potential, significant challenges remain. The sources highlight several interconnected factors. Content is still a big one.
Not enough good stuff to do.
Beyond gaming, there's still a lack of those killer apps for productivity, communication, daily utility that would make most people feel they need a headset. And developing high-quality VR content is expensive, which is a barrier, especially for non-gaming apps where monetization isn't as clear-cut. AI might help here, though.
Cost of the hardware, too.
Still a factor for many. Even with options like Quest 3S under $300, the perception is often that VR is expensive, especially when you look at premium devices like Vision Pro, or if you need a powerful PC or console.
And the user experience itself. Comfort.
Big issues. Headsets can still be bulky, heavy, cause eye strain or motion sickness for some. Battery life is limited, setup can be fiddly. Interfaces aren't always as intuitive as a phone for quick tasks. You often need dedicated space.
Plus that social acceptance problem we talked about.
Yeah, wearing headsets in public just isn't normalized. They look obtrusive, isolating. That's a major barrier that keeps pushing the long-term focus towards those sleeker AR glasses.
And underlying hardware limitations still exist.
Definitely. We still need breakthroughs in mobile processing power, on-device AI efficiency, display tech, battery density, low latency wireless for truly seamless, high-fidelity, untethered experiences all day long. It's that chicken and egg thing. Again, users wait for better content, and UX developers wait for a bigger user base.
Beyond these practical hurdles, the sources brought up some really important ethical considerations and accessibility issues.
Crucial points, especially as VR gets more powerful and integrated. Privacy and data security are top of the list.
That super personal data thing again.
Exactly. VR systems can collect incredibly detailed data about your movements, gaze, interactions, your physical environment, potentially even inferring emotions. Protecting this data, ensuring transparency about how it's used, getting clear consent, it's vital. The potential for misuse is significant.
What about the psychological side?
The immersive nature is powerful, but it brings risks. Potential for addiction or overuse, VR fatigue, disorientation, blurring lines between virtual and real. And while great for therapy, like exposure treatment, it could also trigger strong negative emotions if not designed and used responsibly, especially with vulnerable populations. Social isolation is another potential concern if people rely too heavily on virtual interaction.
And ensuring everyone can actually use this tech. Accessibility.
Yes, making VR accessible for people with disabilities is essential for equity, but it's challenging. Implementing features can be costly, hardware limitations like weight or display focus can be barriers, and there's a lack of standardized guidelines. Solutions involve inclusive design from the outset, testing with diverse users, and leveraging tech like eye tracking, voice controls, and adaptive interfaces.
So these ethical and accessibility challenges aren't just side notes. They could seriously hinder trust and adoption if the industry doesn't tackle them head-on.
Absolutely. Building trust through responsible design, industry collaboration, and maybe even regulation will be key for VR to reach its potential ethically.
Okay, so factoring in all these challenges and opportunities, what's the final future outlook based on the sources? Still optimistic despite the hurdles?
The long-term forecasts remain very optimistic, yeah. Those market growth projections are still pointing towards hundreds of billions of dollars by 2030 and beyond. IDC predicts strong rebounds in headset shipments after a temporary dip.
But the vision of the future is shifting.
It seems so. The long-term endpoint many experts and companies are pointing towards isn't necessarily today's bulky VR headset, but those lighter, wearable AR or MR glasses. Omdia sees MR glasses becoming the central XR platform in the 2030s, eventually selling hundreds of millions annually by 2045. They're seen as the form factor that could truly blend the digital and physical seamlessly.
And AI is the magic ingredient to make those glasses work.
Consistently highlighted as the key enabler for intuitive interaction, context awareness, content generation, making them practical and powerful for everyday life.
So, strong growth expected, especially in enterprise and niche areas where VR provides clear value now. But the ultimate smartphone replacement vision is likely decades away and looks more like AR/MR glasses heavily reliant on AI.
That seems to be the nuanced consensus emerging from the sources. It's a long journey requiring sustained investment across the board: hardware, software, networks like 5G and 6G, content, developer tools. Not an overnight revolution, but a gradual transformation.
What an incredible journey through these sources. We've gone from defining VR to tackling that huge smartphone question, looking at the major players and the money, the massive impact of AI, the current tech landscape, VR's real-world applications beyond gaming, and finally, the significant challenges and the road ahead.
It's definitely clear that while VR isn't kicking your phone out of your pocket tomorrow, the technology is maturing fast, it's finding solid ground in valuable areas, and it's evolving rapidly, especially with AI fueling the fire and that long-term vision shifting towards integrated AR and MFR.
And that brings us to a final thought for you, our listener, to take away from this deep dive. Considering how these sources highlight VR and AI's potential to collect that super personal data, tracking your gaze, your movements, maybe even inferring your emotions. How do we, as a society, ensure robust privacy protections and address the potential psychological impacts before this tech becomes truly pervasive? What does responsible innovation look like when our devices might know us more intimately than ever before? Something to really think about.
Indeed. A critical question for the future.
Thank you so much for providing the material for this deep dive. It's been absolutely fascinating to unpack it all.